It's time for a special program called The 11th Hour, featuring Hughes, Deputy Director of the Washington County Board of Behavioral Health. This weekly program will shed light on important issues in our area and the positive steps we're taking to combat them.
Good morning, Washington County. This is Hughes, and it's time for your 11th hour here on your local radio station, WMOA. Well, with me this morning, I have Geoff Schenkel. And I want to just tell you that when I was preparing today's show, I had trouble figuring out how am I going to even introduce Geoff. And then he shows up in his Star Wars shirt, and I'm thinking, you know what? He's involved in so many things in our community. Maybe the best way to introduce him is he has a lightsaber of energy to try to save Washington County. I don't know. I'm struggling, Geoff. Help me introduce you.
Okay, that's a little grandiose for my taste. I'm a little uncomfortable with a lightsaber or saving.
Okay.
I guess partly because I always worry about us trying to have a tendency to falling into having a savior come fix things for us.
That's fair.
And I think one of the things that's a common element in all the work that I do, from the mentoring at Building Bridges to Careers, or the artwork that I do with neighborhoods, or people who are working through different kinds of trauma through my studio, Resolve Studios, or my work on city council, where I'm trying to help bring to resolution whatever kinds of conflicts come up in the course of the life of a neighborhood. What I think is shared with all those experiences is that we can solve these problems when we come together better than when we just complain and say this is not to our liking, or I hate this, or I can't live with this anymore, and then we turn it over to someone else to go fix it for us, because they may or may not find what is important to us important enough to follow through with and take to completion. But if we're all have a hand in completing a task, whether it's painting a playground on a weekend because it's been a long time since the playground equipment was painted, or it's getting trees trimmed because they're making a sidewalk buckle and somebody turned their ankle on a sweet gum ball, we can't always just turn it over to somebody else and have them take care of it, partly because that's a heavy workload for one individual in any department, in any organization, or any group of volunteers in a volunteer group to see through to completion in all stages of development. We got to kind of share the workload, especially in a day and age where economies are shrinking and revenues from state and federal government are shrinking. We've got to fill in the blanks as citizens.
So when I hear you talk, I'm thinking of a couple of key words that kind of stand out for me: community, empowerment, creative problem solving. So talk to me a little bit. Let's talk first about sort of the art and your experience with art as an artist yourself, but then how, working with youth, you used art to kind of open up the process that they might have about their experience with the community?
Okay, so if I emphasize on the art and the creative process, one thing that is really central to what I do as a creative person, whether I'm painting murals or doing portraits or doing a community mural that's trying to give voice to 500 people, the first step for me is always kind of taking stock of existing conditions, which from a purely creative standpoint is like, what materials do I have to work with?
Okay.
Do I have a canvas or do I have a brick wall? Do I have 4-inch brushes or do I have available to me little brushes that are as thin as a needle point? Do I have acrylic paint? Or do I have 1 gallon of house paint and I have to be creative by mixing in some charcoal with that? So when I use art as a way of working with community or kids who are trying to imagine what else is possible in life. We might say they might be stuck, or they may just not know quite where they want to go. I mean, the emphasis sounds like it's almost doublespeak, but sometimes somebody is really stuck. And then there are other times they just aren't sure what the next step is. And those are a little different. But in all cases, I try to walk people through taking stock of what do we have to work with. What are the variables that we can use here that will allow us to go to a new place, create a new mural, or trim a tree that's getting in the way.
So I'm hearing that some of it is like self-assessment, sort of understanding your skills, your talents, your interests, but then also understanding the context that you're in and
Yes.
sort of what's possible.
Yep. So now I'm jumping a little bit from art to like some of the neighborhood work. I mean, some of that taking stock or self-assessment, as you've referred to it, applied in relationship to our Flanders Field, which is a really important gathering place for many people in our neighborhood and many generations associated with our West Side neighborhood. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody from the neighborhood refer to it as a gathering place other than me.
Okay.
That's how I conceptualize it,
Yeah,
because that's
yeah.
where I see people meeting and where they both in the past, present, and future know to conceptualize something together. So to me, that's the definition of a gathering place, although not many people I interact with use that term the way I do.
But they probably feel similarly, although they might not use the same terminology.
Correct. So in taking stock of what was going on there, we met together, we took notes and made lists and kept track of those lists over time, and damaged or aged playground equipment was an element in our equation. Too many needles on the grass or the blacktop or the mulch or the baseball
So
field.
safety issues.
Yes, that became a variable that we knew we wanted to address. There were portions of the park that were in good shape because they were being cared for by a baseball league, like a traveling team. And that was good for taking care of parts of the park, but it also brought into contrast the parts of the park that weren't being taken care of. And that had an effect on the neighborhood psyche, because then that really brought into contrast the difference between well-kept and overlooked. And it created a drive to do something about it. And so combining all those things, we have baseball here, and over here we have basketball. One's being taken care of, the other one's being
not.
overlooked. We were able to combine those elements. So to me, as an artist, it's like a composition. We're putting different elements together to create a
Your
new
canvas, so to speak. Yeah.
Or a collage. Where we're putting different elements together so that we could create a new outcome or a new work of art on the other side. And so by being out on the basketball court, playing basketball regularly with grown-ups and adults, Jackson Patterson, and people who live in houses and trailers close by coming out, and kids coming. It's harder to do drugs in the park when there's a lot of healthy activity going on. And we have seen a marked decrease in the number of needles that show up on the baseball field, which was causing tensions between the pay-to-play baseball team and the neighborhood, because nobody wanted the needles on there, but we were sort of grappling with who's responsible for this. And so we were able to fix that largely by just having baseball and basketball both going on regularly. You do your thing, we do ours, and the needles don't show up. So we could fix it without, we didn't have to have a surgical drone strike, bombing any drug dealers or anything like that in this heavy-handed way. We took care of it by playing basketball.
And bringing
showing
the
up-
community together and
Yeah.
taking it on head on as a group, right?
And having it be okay for those who don't want to play basketball to sit on the picnic table and talk and visit and talk about Stranger Things or a book that they're reading in middle school. So they could go on simultaneously, and they're very compatible, and they build this environment of togetherness, whether you're really doing the same activity or not.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful example. Well, thank you for sharing your artistic vision and the way that it intersects in our community. And this is Hillis Hughes. I am here with you at your local radio station, WMOA, for the Washington County Behavioral Health Board's 11th hour, and I'm signing off for this week.
Thanks for listening to the 11th Hour, a service of the Washington County Board of Behavioral Health. Tune in next Friday at 11:05 a.m. right here on WMOA for another edition of the 11th Hour.